Well, we often talk about how to legally reduce your taxes by going overseas. What's happening in countries like the United States isn't just about rising taxes. It's about rising intrusions into your financial privacy. I'm going to share with you just the latest example of this right now. Hi, I'm Andrew Henderson. This is Nomad Capitalist. We're the channel and the company that helps 7- and 8-figure entrepreneurs and investors legally go where you're treated best. And here's an article from Forbes that says, under the Biden plan, the IRS would know a lot more about your bank accounts. I'm going to share this with you and comment. President Biden announced the American Families Plan today. This article is from a couple weeks ago, which is designed to, quote unquote, grow the middle class and expand benefits of economic growth to all Americans. Now, doesn't that sound nice? Always a cute name, the American Families Plan. Who can be against American families? The American Families Plan includes, as the author says, a lot to like, no matter which side of the aisle you're on. By any measure, the amount of benefits being proposed is staggering. Which begs the question, how will we pay for all of this? Yes, of course. Because you'll be paying for it. You, the successful entrepreneur, you, the risk taker, you, the person who accumulated income and assets and capital gains, you will be paying for it, of course, as President Biden wants to push the income tax burden of any family earning less than $75,000 at last check to $0. Who's going to pay the bill? It's going to be you, dear viewer. By increasing IRS enforcement, by increasing reporting obligations for financial institutions, and by raising taxes on the wealthy. We've been saying this for a long time. We've been talking about increasing IRS enforcement. And let me just be clear, I'm not suggesting anybody run afoul of the tax laws. I'm suggesting if you don't like the tax laws, to go where you're treated best. Don't sit around and throw your hands up in the air and listen, go where you're treated best. You don't need this stress in your life, okay? Tax enforcement, reporting obligations, and by raising taxes. Each aspect of this plan, the article says, is worthy of its own column. This article will focus on what a senior administration official called me one of the significant steps designed to make sure that taxpayers are paying the taxes they already owe. Increased reporting obligations for financial institutions. Now, almost a decade ago, the U.S. jammed a provision for FATCA into another bill. This is what the U.S. is great at. They put together a bill about something that the American Families Plan, and then everyone puts their own little thing in there that makes life more difficult for anyone who wants to accomplish anything. And what FATCA did was basically say all the foreign financial institutions, the FFIs around the world, bank accounts, brokerage accounts, etc., now have to be the tattletale to the IRS. And so that's when you saw a lot of banks around the world simply saying, hey, we don't want so-called U.S. persons. We'll just close the accounts of existing U.S. persons. I know people who can't even get a mortgage in their own country where they live and pay taxes because they are a U.S. person. Their kids can't open a savings account at the local bank because they don't want U.S. persons. And so you had this reporting. The idea was, hey, we're going to collect all these tax cheats who have foreign accounts. And I guess there are a few of those that they round up. What did it do, though? You've got 8 or 9 million, depending on the number you believe, Americans, U.S. persons who live overseas, most of them not in tax havens. They're not all in the Cayman Islands. Many of them are in the UK and Australia. A lot of them are in Canada. And a lot of them actually have a rather difficult tax scenario because they live in one high tax country whose system doesn't match up with the US system. But nevertheless, their accounts are reported. They have to report their accounts, which was always the case, but this just makes it easier to track. And you're making life difficult for millions of people who just want to go where they're treated best. Now, I see way too many people whose accountants have no clue how to handle reporting requirements for a simple offshore bank account, and that's ridiculous. There are international tax preparers, accountants, tax lawyers who can easily handle that. It's not that difficult if you're thinking, oh, I don't want to go offshore. It's not that difficult if you have the right people helping you. It's also not the case that you can't get any bank accounts as an American, but the common ones, such as Switzerland, generally pretty difficult. There's one we work with that is open to Americans. A lot of the European jurisdictions just don't want Americans. Plenty of other banks do, so you can still get an account as an American. But the reporting was there, and it made a lot of people's lives miserable to catch potentially a few tax cheats. The government always overestimates how much revenue they'll collect from tax. They always overestimate how much revenue they'll collect from some kind of enforcement. And they just want to make your life more difficult. Now, the article from Forbes continues. As things stand today, most taxpayers don't have an obligation to report how much money they have in their bank accounts, meaning domestic bank accounts in the U.S., nor how much they deposited or how much they withdrew. Self-employed taxpayers who, like all Americans, self-report their income and deductions to the IRS are on the honor system. He goes on, talks about the W-2 system. But then he says, by requiring banks to report highest balances and aggregate deposits and withdrawals, the American Family Plan will effectively close the option of underreporting gross receipts or revenues for businesses and self-employed taxpayers. Because what the IRS is going to do is go and basically demand that the bank turn over all that information. How much did you deposit? When? Now, there already are some restrictions in place, and you've seen people be prosecuted for this, even where they structured transactions to avoid a $10,000 limit, where there's reporting. Suspicious transactions reported. All these things are reported. And so, again, when I lived in the United States, I reported every dollar that I owed. I maximized deductions, something that I now think is a stupid idea, because you can simply go where you're treated best and stop letting the tail wag the dog. But I paid on every dollar because I just didn't want to get in trouble. I don't think I'm smarter than a bunch of trained people at the IRS. I don't think you should think that way either. But then the article goes on and talks about all the problems, because politicians never consider the problems. They just want to go after those nasty self-employed people who are underreporting their income. I think there are fewer of them than the politicians say. And how do I know that? Because Elizabeth Warren basically insinuates, just as one example, that everybody who's successful is a tax cheat. Look at her tweets. Look at what she puts on social media. The wording is basically, if you're wealthy, you must be cheating on your taxes. So that's an issue in and of itself. When you're in a country where one of the leading voices in the party in power says, just the fact that you've been successful means you're a cheat. That is what society thinks. She has influenced millions of Americans who are staying in the U.S., who are frustrated by the impacts that globalization and all sorts of other things have had on them. The fact that the gravy train is over because all kinds of countries around the world are popping up and are giving their people a middle class, and that's eating away at the U.S. She has convinced them the problem is you because you're a cheat. It's not just that you should be taxed more. Now you're a cheat, and that's exactly what this plays into. Now, the problem is that what should be considered and addressed as this plan works its way through Congress is, for example, young couple saves up to buy a home. All the savings are put into the Dream Home savings account. And then they make the payment, blah, 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 blah. Is the account being, reported multiple times? Is it going to lead to an audit because they moved money between accounts? It also talks about if you're a business owner, what challenges are you going to have, doing the same kind of thing? If the proposal to require financial institutions to increase reporting to include account balances, here's what they want. Account balances, they're going to know how much is in your bank account. Inflows and outflows is passed, and there is no question it will increase the taxes collected. They will find somebody. That's what the article says. Both self-reporting and audit outcomes will likely be improved. However, and this is where he's also saying could be a problem, defending against an IRS exam is stressful and can be costly. It's a waste of time. One of the things we talked about at Nomad Capitalist Live with a couple of the guys was how they don't even file a tax return now. They've gone where they're treated best. They don't have to file anything. Or maybe they could just be filing like a flat tax. If you want to live in Italy, it's 100,000 euros a year. You send your 100,000 euros. You don't have nearly the compliance issues. Italy may be not the best example, but there are places where here's my payment, one-page form, leave me alone. You don't need to know anything about me. I'm giving you my annual lump sum tax. Basically what the article is saying is you're going to have a lot less privacy, of course. It's going to potentially raise false positives in terms of if you're moving money around from different sources, they're going to think, oh, this guy's moving money. And it's going to raise the likelihood of an audit on people like business owners. Here's the other thing. This is a giant invasion of your privacy. Again, if you live in the U.S., you have tax obligations to meet. I suggest that you do that. But does the government deserve to know how much money is in your bank account? Do they deserve to track every transaction? And do you have to live? Here's the big thing. People say, oh, Andrew, Americans leave and they give up their citizenship over taxes. Sure, some people do. As someone who has given up his citizenship, I really don't believe it's that simple. What I felt, and really, besides just the fact I did not belong in the U.S., my issue is the issue of you cannot have peace when you've got to be living overseas and you've got to be filing all these forms. You miss one thing up, who knows what could happen next. Now, I don't see tremendous risk in terms of just having offshore bank accounts, having offshore companies. I don't think I've ever had anyone who's been audited. But you don't want to make your life any more difficult than it has to be. you've seen just in the last 10 years, in the last 15 years since I've been in business, 16 years now, there's a lot more requirements. If you accept credit cards in your business, there's new forms that the IRS sends out for that. You've got to issue more people 1099s. There's just a lot more financial reporting because the government never does the work it claims it does. You pay all these taxes. I mean, some Americans are scratching up to 50% there when you add up federal, state, local, all those income taxes. You're paying almost half your income in some cases. They can't even do the job of tracking down their own deadbeats. I mean, who else gets to do that? Does a business get to, outsource to everybody else who are paying it the job of tracking down people who owe them money? No, they're going to make it your job. They're going to make it the bank's job. They're going to make it someone else's job because they're not very efficient at what they do. And so they're going to make your life more difficult, not only on a reporting standard potentially, as they've already done, but if you're the person receiving money, if you're the business receiving money with a bank account, your life is going to be more difficult. They don't care about your privacy. They want to know everything about you. This is just another reason to go where you're treated best. This is just the next step in the movement to them totally controlling your life. And again, pay the taxes that you owe, but as taxes go up, you're going to have higher taxes, plus more burden, plus less privacy, plus the higher chance for erroneous audits. This does not seem like an existence to have. Is this worth it? Is this a life that you want to lead? I think it's not. I think you should go where you're treated best. Don't stop now. We've got well over 1,000 more videos here on YouTube for you to watch and learn how to go where you're treated best. And if you want to work with Nomad Capitalist personally, go to nomadcapitalist.com/apply, learn about our unique, tried and true process, garnered over years of experience, and learn how you can become our client.